Hello, everybody. Before we start, I want to say this podcast is for education only. We are not giving medical advice. If you or someone you love is dealing with a brain injury, concussion, or just has health issues, please talk to a licensed medical professional. That is my disclaimer, everybody. Let's get into the podcast. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Every Day is Friday 365. I'm your host, Matthew, and remember to subscribe so you can join me on this journey where every day is Friday. Come on now. Today, I got a really special guest joining us, Dr. Brody Miller. He helps professionals and athletes recover from brain fog and concussions. What makes his work so powerful is that he has been through it himself. I'm really excited for people to hear your story, Dr. Brody. Let's jump right into it. How you doing?
Fantastic. I appreciate you having me on, Matthew.
Yeah, how's life been treating you lately? And where have you been finding meaning and purpose today in life?
Some ups and downs. I mean, the winter season, I'm just overcoming a little bit of a cold here, actually. But I mean, it's not really what happens to us, it's how we respond to it. And life is good, man. I mean, if I compare myself and my life to 10, 12 years ago, it's a completely different life
I
for
want to
me.
jump right into that because your story is very powerful for someone that has been assaulted for one, and for someone that has brain injuries for number two. I mean, back in 2013, you were assaulted and you suffered a brain injury. What happened?
Yeah, I was outside of a nightclub and I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, quite honestly. I was drinking and for whatever reason, I thought it was a good idea to pick a fight with a bouncer in my hometown of Asheville, North Carolina. And it was an unfortunate incident. I got thrown outside the nightclub. I was in the middle of the street and ended up running back towards him, and he threw a pretty nice haymaker, knocked me out cold on the streets. And to add injury to the insult, somebody recorded it and it got put on the local news TV station. I was knocked out cold, don't remember much for months. I had memory loss, brain fog, impulsive issues, and really it was just a low moment because it was insult to injury because he knocked me out and everybody and their grandma in my hometown saw it. Actually, over 100,000 people saw me getting knocked out. And so, ironically, that was one of the best things that ever happened to me, is what I tell people. Because quite literally, I got knocked some sense into myself because I was I'm not going to say it was not, it was really hard because I was experiencing a brain bleed. I was experiencing grand mal seizures. I had brain surgery. Medications were not working. I was still experiencing those seizures even after the brain injury. I was really hit another low point because I nothing was working, even the brain surgery and the medications. And so it really led me to just search. I knew there had to be something better than what doctors were telling me. I knew deep down in my gut that there had to be something better until I discovered that the brain can change, it can heal, it can adapt, it can rewire, and that you're pretty much in the driver's seat. You're responsible for your actions. You're responsible for your habits, and ultimately responsible. You're in the driver's seat much more than people give themselves credit for.
Yeah, I mean, that moment changed everything for you. I mean,
Yeah,
at first, did you like understand how serious the injury was?
I didn't, because the brain fog was so severe. I knew I felt like crap, but I didn't really understand the severity of it. I knew I didn't feel good, and I knew was really bad, and I knew I was suffering from like depression afterwards, but I never really understood the bird's eye view picture.
I mean, so many people don't see brain injuries right away because I mean, football players, UFC fighters, I mean, they're just doing the daily thing and they forget their phone numbers after and like, "Oh no, it's just nothing."
Right. Yeah, I mean, we think that it's just part of the process, but it's really not. It's when we have impact to the brain, blood flow quite literally travels out from the front of our brain to more primal and emotional centers of our brain. That's why our decision making is worse. That's why addiction is higher. Depression, all the blood traveled away from the front of our brain.
Now, what were some symptoms you've noticed from when this happened to you?
What I noticed was definitely the memory loss. Was I wasn't able to figure out where I put my keys or my wallet, and was having issues with simple conversations. Was issues focusing, and on top of that, I my impulsiveness was off the charts. I mean, I got even heavier into drug and alcohol addiction after that fact.
Yeah, you were saying that even doing the laundry was a tough task to do.
Yeah, like just daily things, and I was just a wreck. I was like, I lost my will to live almost at a certain point until I discovered some hope.
Yeah, what was that time like when you were having like brain bleeds and seizures?
It was really scary because I had brain surgery and they told me that that was going to fix it. And so we were really optimistic at that time. And I was about 8 months into sobriety, and I was still experiencing those seizures. And when you have a grand mal seizure, you lose consciousness, and would fall and hit my head again and experience even more concussions. So it was a horrifying, brutal time in my life for sure.
Now, can you touch on the tumor you had?
Sure. It's called a cavernous malformation, which is essentially a benign brain tumor. Uh, a malformation, if you look up the word in Spanish, mal is bad formation. And so essentially, this little tiny cranberry size, 2.5 centimeter area on my left frontal lobe was bleeding, and it was leaking blood in the rest of my brain. And the brain does not like blood when it's leaking, especially.
Yeah, and that was a scary time in your life. And today, how has your recovery been?
It's been way better than I ever could imagine. I never would be able to say this in the past, but I'm completely seizure free now. I'm going on 2 years of no seizures. And I mean, that to me feels a lot like a miracle, but at the same time, if you look at the neuroscience, it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, how did like memory loss affect your confidence?
It was really bad because I already kind of suffered from low self-esteem and low confidence at that time. And then on top of things, the memory loss, but also the impulsiveness, which meant that like I felt like a dog when it sees a piece of food. I couldn't stop myself from doing things and saying certain things, and that would affect my confidence around my social life. And people were like, kept asking myself, why am I doing this? Why can't I stop myself from making certain bad decisions or saying silly things to my family and friends? And so it really took a toll on my self-esteem at that time.
You know, we touched on it a little bit. I've probably had some concussions in my day. I'm an athlete. I played water polo, I played basketball, and there's people playing football out there, and UFC, they're fighting. You know, what's something that people like misunderstand about brain injuries?
Probably the most misunderstood idea is that it's permanent, that you have to learn to live with it. And that's absolutely not true. You do not have to learn to live with something as misfortunate as a brain injury. And in fact, I'm of the opinion that you can get your brain health back and even better than it was before if you just know the right principles.
Okay, and you attended in 2019 a meditation retreat. What did you learn there?
I learned the basic kind of neuroscience of neuroplasticity, which means the brain's ability to reorganize itself over time through meditation. I was at a Dr. Joe Dispenza event, and he was talking about how we have 60,000 to 70,000 thoughts in a day, and that 90% of those thoughts are negative and the same as the day before. And so that really kind of gave me a revelation. And his idea was that with meditation, we go from the outside world into our inside world and our inside universe. And that meditation just simply means to know thyself, if you look it up, which means to know yourself better, become more aware of yourself and your thoughts and your emotions and your actions. So it just brings awareness. And there's a beautiful Harvard study that really blew my mind, was that in 56 days of meditation, the physical structure of your brain can change, which means not only does the brain change on a chemical level, it changes on a physical level after 56 days of meditation. And Harvard, like, it blew my mind, really.
You know, Dr. Brody, I never realized the brain could heal itself. I know the body is so powerful. It's really, our body is so powerful, like I just said. I mean, what does it mean when your brain can like heal itself?
It means that we can change, and it means that before they called it neuroplasticity, it was learning. They're like, oh, he learned this person learned that, or we adapted as humans, we changed. It's the science of change to me, that change is possible, and that just because we're feeling a certain way about our past or even our present, that it doesn't dictate our future.
You know, I want to ask you, was the recovery fast or was it a long process?
Yeah, to be honest, it was a pretty long process. Yet at the same time, when I learned meditation and I learned these neuroscience principles or the basic understandings of how the brain work, things got a lot better way faster than I expected.
Interesting. Can you tell me more? What's some of the key to, you know, is it to let loose and just, you said know thyself. Can you break that down for me?
What I mean is, as humans, we have what's called, sorry to get a little complicated here, but something that's called metacognition, which means the awareness of your own thinking. And why that's so powerful is humans, we have a larger size frontal lobe in comparison to the rest of our brain. So 40% of our brain is our frontal lobe, our neocortex as humans, and that gives us the ability to have more awareness. It gives us the ability to visualize and think in terms of 10 years in the future or in the past, where most animals can't do that. So I hope that that makes a little bit of sense, that meditation helps grow the frontal lobe, which in turn increases our awareness. And when you're more aware of things, you start to have the ability to change them.
I like that. Is there anything that people can take like nicotine to help their brain out or lion's mane?
Yeah, it's lion's mane is one of my favorite. I'm not a big proponent of nicotine, to be honest. Sometimes I'll use it because it boosts a neurotransmitter called acetylcholine in the brain, which kind of hyper focuses us, but it's highly addictive. I'm more on the side of using things that are natural, like lion's mane, omega-3 fatty acids, B complex, vitamin D3 and K2. Just there's a handful of supplements that you can do to boost cognition in the brain and neuroplasticity.
Yeah, I was on your page earlier and you were saying hydrogen helps the brain.
Well, hydrogen is a stabilizer. It's the number one element in the universe, and the hydrogen helps stabilize brain injury. If you increase it, it doesn't really affect neuroplasticity per se, but it does help regulate and calm down the brain.
Because recently I bought something from Echo Water, a hydrogen water device, and it puts hydrogen inside the water, and it helps with gut health, your memory, and like joint pain.
Yes, absolutely. And we're all we are the periodic table when you think about it. Periodic table elements, which by the way, I hated chemistry in high school, but I love chemistry now because it explains everything. Brain chemistry, we are just a bunch of particles and chemicals floating around.
Yeah, can you explain the rebound method?
Yeah, I would love to. And the reason I created the rebound method was I believe that we can rebound from a brain injury and turn a setback into a major comeback. And so the rebound method that I created is just principles of brain health to step by step help you rewire your brain and get back on track after a brain injury. So the principles are R is for refocus. So a very important thing is we're going to lose our concentration and our focus. That's so normal. Our mind will wander, but it's important to refocus on what you do want versus what you don't. So I think brain injury is a lot like climbing a mountain, that it's okay. We can look at the past and see what happened. We can look back where we came from, but it's important to just take baby steps in the right direction, climbing up the mountain. And sometimes you're going to slip on the ice. You're going to fall back. You're going to relapse, but just pick yourself back up and focus on where you do want. And I don't have time to explain the intricacies of all the principles, but let me quickly just talk about the rest. E is for engage, which means activating our brain, engaging it, and using it. B is for brain, which I call are the 5 principles of neuroplasticity: breathing, repetition, the law of association, intensity, and novelty. The next one is O for observe. So it's just like refocusing and observing yourself from the third bird's eye perspective. U is for unconscious, which means our unconscious or subconscious mind. So using that as our superpower. N is for nexus, which nexus just explains how everything is connected. And D is for dedicate. So dedicating yourself to a long-term recovery and dedicating yourself to being the best version of you.
You know, Dr. Brody, you are the proof of, turning a setback into a comeback. I love that saying.
Thank you, man. I believe that with all my heart is that our adversities can actually strengthen us, and we can turn frustration and mold it into something positive.
Now, can you unpack this for me? Because I've heard that if you brush your teeth with the opposite hand, there's some type of science involved in that.
Absolutely. So when we use our right hand, it's actually controlled by the left side of our brain. So if I'm moving my hand here, it's actually stimulating the motor cortex of our brain. If we do the other side, vice versa, the right side of our brain controls our left hand. And when we're brushing our teeth with our left hand, we're using neural pathways that aren't typically used. So most of us are right hand dominant, yet we don't use our left side very much. So just a simple exercise like that can boost neuroplasticity and create new neural pathways.
Now, what would you recommend for people to try out that's easy and for they can just get their other side of their brain going?
I would just start with like hand exercises, believe it or not. You can just use like simple thing like right here, if people are watching this on video, like a pinky thumb exercise. So putting up your left pinky and putting up your right thumb and then switching them. Now it seems like it would be easy intuitively, but it's actually kind of hard. But if you continue a simple exercise like this for 2 to 3 minutes, a lot of times you're going to see how your brain adapts and changes and adapts to what you're doing in the same way that you learn how to ride a bike in a way.
You know, you mentioned there's different parts of the brain. Can you break down the different parts of the brain?
Yes, absolutely. And it's one of my favorite things to do. So we have what's called the frontal lobe here in the yellow, which controls our decision making, our impulse control, our focus and concentration. It thinks in terms of past and the future. It's also responsible for short-term memory. In the green here, we have what's called the parietal lobe. It's responsible for our spatial awareness, navigation, proprioception of where we are in space and time. In the back, we have what's called the occipital lobe. This is our visual cortex. It's responsible for our vision and visual processing. A overlooked one here, Matthew, is the cerebellum. And the cerebellum is our mini brain. It's responsible for the ABCs: accuracy, balance, and coordination. And ironically, 70% of our brain's neurons are densely located in the cerebellum. And when you train your cerebellum, a lot of amazing things can happen. And then we have our limbic system, our limbic brain, including like the hypothalamus. We're talking about the amygdala and the hippocampus, which is responsible for memory. We have our brainstem, which is all about our fight or flight mechanism, keeping us alive, breathing, respiration, blood flow, heart rate, things of that nature. Oh, I did skip the temporal lobe. Let me talk about it real quickly. So our auditory perception, auditory cortex, it's also responsible for in-depth emotions and things of that nature. So why this is so important is when you can locate, when you've had a brain injury, what kind of symptoms you're having, it helps you get to the root cause of getting your brain back on track and healing.
You know, my mom always says, wear a helmet when you're riding a bike. How important is wearing a helmet or, wearing some protection on the head for humans? Yeah. How important is that to wear
Oh,
protection for the brain?
super important. It's important that we protect the most important organ that we have, because when our brain's not working, everything else kind of falls to the wayside. And neuroprotection is an idea. How do we protect our brain? So wearing a helmet is huge. I actually one time fell off of a bike going downhill, and boom, my helmet cracked open. And I said, well, I'm kind of glad that I was wearing that, right? So protect what's important.
That is so true. Protect what is important. Your brain is probably one of the most important parts of the body.
I would say so, other than the heart. We could argue with that one all day. But if you get shot in the head, you're dead. So that there's an argument there as well.
Now, what's your thoughts on Elon Musk's Neuralink?
Oh boy, that's a tough one. I try to think about this in a flexible way, because if you're able to use Neuralink to help people that are paralyzed regain their body sensations, and be able to walk again, I'm all for it. On the other hand, I don't believe personally that we want to give our power away to a computer system and let it control our thinking. I think that's a big mistake.
Yeah, the future is going to be curing blindness, like you were saying, some stuff like that. There's some things that it could be used for. It looks like in the future, but when you tap into the internet and you have all the knowledge on the internet just in your head, you know, I talked to someone recently, and he was saying that humans are made to forget.
We are.
It's one of our things that is like it helps us, move forward from things. Basically, he was saying.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's important because brain cells grow, but also brain cells have to shrink away and atrophy in order to make space for the new things in our life. So use it or lose it. And it is important that we forget, like, we just no way we're going to be able to keep everything there.
I've been told that when you get older, you always want your brain to be you want to be using your brain as much as possible as you get older.
Yeah.
What does your brain respond to, like, repetition and consistency?
Repetition, consistency, intensity. So intensity is a big one, because the more intense the emotional experience, the more we're going to remember it. That's why when we have it, unfortunately, on the opposite side, like a traumatic event, we're going to remember that. But also on a positive note, like our marriage or our first kiss, we're always going to remember that because the intensity was so high. But also the idea of association. And so what I mean by association is that our brain makes connections um, in comparison to our environment and certain thoughts. So if I ask you this question, what do you first think of when you think of the idea of New York City, Matthew? What first comes to mind?
Well, I was just thinking of my first thought, and it was my first thought is 9/11. So I'm
Okay,
gonna say 9/11.
fair enough. So what do you think of when you think about 9/11? What comes to
It was
mind?
my first thought. That was my first memory.
Okay, but what when you think about 9/11, what else pops up in your mind?
9/11 is my dad's birthday.
Mm. Okay, when you think about your dad, what do you first think of?
He's my hero,
And when you think of heroes, what do you think of?
my dad.
Okay, so that's how our brain makes connections. So when I think of New York City, I think of the uh, Freedom Tower. I'll think about pizza. I'll think about, for some reason, when I think about that, I think about the cabs in New York City. And then when I think about cabs, I think of the traffic. And then I think about hot dogs. And when I think about hot dogs, I think about ketchup. And now this seems stupid, right? Like a silly conversation. But this is how our brain makes connections of the next thing. And that's super important because if we associate with bad people or we associate with bad thinking patterns, we tend to become and think like the people we're surrounded by.
I've always done little things like repetition. If I'm trying to like speak certain words or I'm trying to understand certain things, how much does that go into the brain?
Yeah, repetition is number one. I mean, repetitive thinking patterns that lead to repetitive words that we use, language patterns, which lead to repetitive actions, which lead to repetitive habits, which ultimately forms our character and our destiny, in my personal opinion. So it's really everything. What we repeat, we become.
You know, Dr. Brody, with all your years of experience, what's like a daily brain habit do you recommend?
A daily brain habit I would recommend is breathing. Controlling your breathing patterns because we want to boost oxygen and blood to the brain. And so one of my favorites is what I call nitric oxide breathing, which is pretty simple because in your nose you have a higher concentration of nitrogen and oxygen. And you can do it just real quickly with me. You go. And you repeat that for 2 minutes, and you'll get kind of like a head rush, and you'll get more nitrogen and oxygen and blood flow to your brain, and it's pretty awesome what it can do in a short period of time.
Now, what would you recommend for people that have anxiety?
If you're struggling with anxiety, one of the things I would recommend the most to start is to journal, because journaling and exercise to start, because when you journal, you can write out your thoughts and you can start to become aware of those thought patterns and those anxious thought patterns and kind of separate and distance yourself. But also just get out and exercise and eat healthy. Those three things are going to make a big bit of a difference.
Yeah, can you touch on this? Can you unpack this for me a little bit? Because, I've been told that when you have like anxiety or something, depression or something like that, nutrients for yourself is very crucial. Rest and exercise. Can you unpack that for me?
Yeah. When you think about exercise, it's the best antidepressant that was created. And man, I mean, men and women, we were designed to move. We were designed to push ourselves. And so it actually releases neuroepinephrine, which is a painkiller basically dopamine levels go up, serotonin, etc. And now when it comes to the nutrients we're putting into our body, my grandma, or everybody's grandma, used to say, you are what you eat. And there's a lot of wisdom in that, because at a very real level, our brain and our nervous system are just created by what we ingest and put into our body. So if we're putting toxins like cigarettes or alcohol and things like that, what do we expect that we're going to get back? And then rest, and rest is so important, because when we sleep, we consolidate memories, we detoxify our brain. um Rest and getting proper rest is so overlooked, especially for people like you and me, Matthew, that push ourselves and extend ourselves. Uh, we overlook the importance of rest, because we need to rest to reset.
You know, I was gonna bring that up because I'm not on top of my sleep schedule as much as I should be. Sometimes I only get like 5 hours of sleep with the podcast and work and posting a podcast and scheduling. And it's like I'm on a podcast one night last week, and it went on for 4 hours, my podcast, after an 8 hour shift. And like I had to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. People like, I'm doing this for you, the listeners, and the people
All
watching
right.
at home, and how long should the brain really rest?
I would say I am the same way. First of all, it's all about progress here and admitting how we can improve. And I would say 8 to 9 hours if possible, because that gives you more than enough time to detoxify your brain. And there's studies that prove that just a little bit of sleep deprivation, it causes incredible issues in the brain. And sleep deprivation is how we it's how we lose our sanity. Navy SEALs talk about this, that if we, that's one of the worst forms of torture known to man, is sleep deprivation.
Now, what's your thoughts on like cat naps?
I think they're fantastic. They're fantastic. I actually have an Aura ring. I had no association with this company, but uh, it shows that you can catch up on sleep pretty quickly, like a 15 to 45-minute cat nap.
I want to ask you this because I was talking to my brother the other day, and I was telling him the way I wake up is kind of like scary to me because my alarm is so loud and it's making all these noises. Does that make a big impact on our brain in the morning?
Yeah, it does. And I'm also guilty of this, but uh, when you think about it, it just completely interrupts you. You don't have any way of just gradually waking up, which is more ideal. Before alarm clocks, it was the sun probably that woke people up, because that didn't even exist. So that gradually moves you from different brainwave states, and it's important. There are tools that you can use, like a fake sun alarm, that I've experimented with in the past. It's pretty cool. It kind of, you wake up and then you're not so agitated.
I'm about to give that a try. My brother has one of those, and it's almost like the sun is rising, and then there's birds chirping to wake him up.
Yeah, exactly that one. Yeah,
So it's pretty cool. I'm gonna have to give that a shot because the way I'm waking up is, and it's triggering. It triggers me because like anytime I hear that alarm on someone else's phone, I'm triggered. I'm like, whoa, it's something
yeah,
mental in the brain that understands that hey, it's time to wake up. Or
right.
maybe there's something involved into there. Maybe I mean maybe Apple. Like even like I realized when you hear like a telephone, or you hear some like a car alarm, or you hear something like that, the brain recognizes all those noises.
Oh yeah. It's like the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response. It's like alertness, and it's survival states. It's a state of survival.
Yeah, I mean, how has the brain transformed over all the years that humans have been around?
Well, it's back to that idea of that frontal lobe and neocortex. Is, as humans, as we evolved over time, the more surface area and density that we grew in the neocortex in our frontal lobe, which it is responsible for being able to do amazing things like go to the moon or, uh, think in terms of 10 years in the future. But at the same time, it can also be our biggest trap. I mean, it gives us anxiety and it can really mess us up mentally.
I had someone on the podcast, Ryan, and he told me that a big thing in humans' evolution was when we learned how to throw.
Interesting. I never really kind of thought about that, but it makes sense is that it was like a dynamic move that we normally didn't engage in. Interesting concept though.
It really is. And I learned something on your page that I did not know was around. I know a lot of people have concussions, but
Yeah.
about, 3.8 million concussions every year. That is outstanding amount of concussions that happen every year.
Yeah, and then really that's on the lower end of the spectrum, and that's from what we know because most concussions are unreported. So those are it happens a lot more frequently, from falls, from car accidents, from playing sports, all kinds of things. And I think a topic that most people don't understand is that you don't need to have a concussion to have a brain injury. You don't need to experience a hit to the head. There's other forms of brain injuries, such as chemical brain injuries. For an example, if you took antidepressants for too long and became over reliant on them, or if you've used Xanax over a certain amount of years or some illicit drug, there's brain damage that can happen from mold. There's brain damage that can happen from parasites. So we're talking about there's a lot more to the spectrum for a brain injury than most people think.
I have a buddy at work, and he said after his wife got hit in a car accident, she has never been the same. What are
Mm.
some things that she could do to recover?
Mhm. How old is she?
I'm guessing she's in her 60s. That's how old my friend is.
Hmm. So number one is to have hope and to understand just some basic brain science of how the brain can rewire itself and change and adapt. Start with a little bit of education, but then things like you were saying is like brushing with your left, hand and walking backwards and creating novelty in new situations in our life, socializing more, and getting out and moving and exercising, taking some health supplements, drinking lots of water and focusing on nutrition. So there's a lot of things she can do.
Yeah, in doing the research and knowing that you can help yourself out in, small ways to make a big difference. And what
Yes.
are some of the common mistakes after a concussion people make?
Some of the most common that I see is uh, only resting instead of rest is extremely important, but when somebody says just rest it off, the only problem with that is you're not getting circulation or blood flow into your brain. So I highly recommend even by week 1 a lot of times is to start to get moving, some light movement and things of that nature. Rest a lot, absolutely, but also get moving.
I want to share this story because it's happened to me. Um, so I built assembly lines at work, and I got shot in the eye with a laser. Okay, for example, and I did not know. I just went throughout the day. I was like, man, I really got hit. And then a couple days later, I was doing some exercises and the blood was flowing, and back of my head, man, it hurt. I was
Mm.
having these major headaches, and I was like, man, something's really wrong with me. And I pulled out ChatGPT, and I started asking about like what's the problems with me having huge headaches in the back of the head, and all this. And they're like, go see professional health, go see professional health. And then I put in there that I got shot by a laser because I remembered that, light was hurting me and all this other stuff. And they're like, in 2 weeks, if it doesn't help, If it doesn't get recovered in, 2 weeks, go see a professional. I talked to a professional and she was like, you know, is it helping? Are you recovering from it? I go, yes, it's taking time, but she goes, the brain and everything like that. You got to make sure, like, there's stuff with the eye and all that too that you don't want to make sure it gets burned. So, I mean, there's a lot to everything you go into and you learn from, something
Yeah.
like that. I'm recovered now, but it
Great.
scared me there for a hot second there.
Oh, I bet. I've had an eye injury myself. About 8 years ago, I got hit in the eye by a paintball, and I'm still, quite honestly, struggling with that. But I believe so much in our brains and bodies' adaptive power that I make the best of it.
Something that drives me nuts is how our eyesight doesn't, improve over time. It actually like we actually lose our eyesight.
Yeah, no, you're not alone there. I was kind of ticked off that my eye didn't get better and then my eyesight gets worse, but we can only do our best, right?
That is 100%. And you know, I know you're a doctor and all that in the brain, and you know, when should someone seek professional help?
Well, I would say if you're not able to be able to get it right yourself. It like just like you did. You asked ChatGPT first. You see if you could come up with some solutions in the short term. But if you've experienced something severe, like I love and I hate Western medicine at the same time in the traditional medical system. But if I got shot or if I got assaulted or emergency medicine is a miracle because it saves so many people. But at the same time, if you're experiencing something that's chronic or something that's prolonging over years, you perhaps want to look into other alternative and Eastern medicines.
You mentioned earlier in the podcast you are what you eat. How important is nutrients in brain healing?
I would say it's probably the most foundational and most important thing that you can do, period. My good friend and colleague, Kevin Ballister, he wrote a book called How to Feed a Brain, and it changed my life. Kevin fell 20 feet off of a water tower, and he was comatized for 2 months or so. Upon waking up, he found out that they were feeding his brain. Well, this is him looking back upon it with corn syrup in the hospital. And that wasn't really leading to any substantial healing changes in the brain. But once he started to learn how to feed a brain, his brain got back on track. And now Kevin is like, almost fully back to normal, which is incredible.
Now, what foods support the brain functions the most?
Some of the foods quickly is like blueberries. We're talking about broccoli, eggs for their choline content. Um, but one of the few that are overlooked are sulfur rich foods for the brain because it helps detoxify our brain. So we're talking about garlic, talking about onions, mushrooms, because a lot of people know of the other brain foods, but I have to bring those up because they're very important
You
too.
know, brain fog is very common in a lot of people in this day and age. Uh, what causes brain fog in everyday people?
I'd say the main thing that causes brain fog is inflammation in the brain. And the reason I believe that happens is you mentioned it, a lot of it has to do with foods, eating too many sugars and putting bad chemicals and foods and non-organic foods into our brain. The second is screen time, like over usage of screen time, not getting enough natural sunlight and things of that nature. And probably the third is the mental aspect of it. They may not understand the science of how their brain can rewire itself and get better and how we can reduce inflammation in the brain.
I've realized that a lot of people out there, they're going after these quick dopamine hits. They're always on their phone. They're doing the same routine every day for 40 years. Like
Yeah.
there's nothing that's helping their brain grow. Is
Yep.
there any tricks to getting outside of the The same routine?
Yeah, I mean, routines, we all have them. They're all important, but to get outside of your comfort zone is just something as simple as if you're driving to work, drive down an alternative pathway, or don't use GPS and say use it or lose it. Just little tiny changes like that. When you're walking, just walk backwards and like twist your head. Just do weird, simple things. Brush with the left side of your hand instead. Just these little tiny changes can add up to a lot.
Yeah, and exercise. That's a huge thing for a lot of people. If you're not exercising the body and the brain, you can fall behind really fast.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we like I said, we're built for movement. We built to test ourselves, built to push ourselves to the limit and take cold showers. Um, but movement is just so important.
That's something I do. I take cold showers, I go in a sauna, I push my body to its extreme, and then, after a cold shower, I feel so good. I mean, and a lot of people out there never have done a cold shower and they're like, "Oh, I would never do that." It's like, I recommend it. I really do. Maybe just 30 seconds in the shower, but a cold shower will wake you up, get everything you feel so energized for the rest of the day.
Yeah, and they say the science shows that it can boost dopamine levels by up to 500% if you do that consistently, which is nuts.
My mom is a school teacher and she wanted me to ask you this. Are there any ways to help kids remember letters and sounds?
Yes, there are. And one of the ways that I would say is by using different parts of our brain for them to help remember letters or sound. So like exaggeration is a huge way. So if you're thinking about learning a new letter or new sound, make it bigger, make it brighter, make it strange. These are the ways that we're going to remember things faster. Exaggerate it. Um, think it's all in the mind. It's all in the mind, and there's so many tricks and tools that you can do to improve memory retention.
Now, would that help kids focus in school better as well?
Yes. So exaggeration is like make it playful, make it fun. We're gonna remember it faster if it's if we make like a story to it or something like that. Uh, Using different parts of the brain, let them hear it, let them uh, visualize it or see it visually, and sounds or emotions, smells even, believe it or not, can help people remember things faster.
Now, I do know that a lot of people are worried about their memory and, can the brain still improve years later as like people get older?
Yes, and I say this with a caveat because you can teach an old dog new tricks, uh, but the fact is the older that we get, the neuroplasticity actually does go down in the brain. But that doesn't mean that we can't still change it as we age. And in fact, it's even more important to take extra care of your brain and to do things that are novel and new. Maybe go somewhere that you've never been and put yourself in uncomfortable situations. And it's, easy now, hard later, hard now, easy later is like how I say it.
I always tell people the body is a temple and body, mind, and spirit. There's something in there. If you take care of all three of those, your life is going to be improved.
You got that right, man. And I used to treat my body like it was a tent. So now I do my best to treat it like it's a temple.
With that being said, what inspired you to write your book? I mean, what is it? No, what is it?
Brain rescue.
Brain Rescue. Yeah, what inspired you to
Yeah.
write your book, Brain Rescue?
Truthfully, it was just I wanted to get something out there that the old me, the 10-year-old version of me, could use to inspire and give that person hope. And so That's what motivated me, and especially because I understand how bad a brain injury can be and how devastating it can be. And so it's just making sure that that information got out there, that there is hope.
I love asking people that write books on my podcast, who is your book for?
My book is for anyone that's experienced a brain injury or a concussion, and wants to get their memory back on track. So we're talking about athletes, high level professionals, or just everyday busy dads and moms out there that, or even for loved ones of those the people that know their loved one has experienced a brain injury or concussion and they want to get their brain back on track. That's pretty much who it's written for.
Can you sprinkle a little bit of knowledge on my listeners and the people watching? What are some of the biggest lessons from your 90-day blueprint?
The number one is just the basic science of how the brain can change, heal, and adapt and learn, as well as is just inspiration from my own story and also the rebound method that I spoke of. The whole thing is in there. How you can step by step go from the physical to the mental to the emotional to the spiritual aspects of brain health recovery.
How does it feel helping people, that have been through like something you've been through?
It's extremely rewarding. This is so rewarding when I get a message or I get a text or a call that I've been able to impact somebody in a positive way.
Yeah. I mean, I've always wondered, like, what's like one habit that protects the brain like long term?
Habit that protects the brain long term, I would say musical instruments is one of the most neuroprotective things that you can do, as well as learning a language, a new language. Because when you think about it, they actually did a study that musicians experience less pain than the average population because their brain completely rewires itself in unique ways, and this and similar for people that know more than one language. So it's like one of the most testing things you can do for your brain.
I love that. Always continue to learn.
Yes, bingo.
I've heard
Bingo.
people playing chess is actually really in their older age is really helpful for them for their learning, for their brain to be always thinking.
Exactly. Exactly. Learning, become a lifelong learner. That's the best thing that you can do for yourself and become with that beginner mentality and mindset.
I love that. That is such a good point. That's kind of like why so now I golf. I just taken that up.
Oh,
And
cool.
something with golf is I can do it for many, many years. And as a guy, there's always problem solving. I love that part of it.
Oh yeah, man. I'm more of a tennis player myself, but I want to get into golf. Like I used to play when I was a kid, and it's so much fun, man.
No, it's a lot of fun. I used to play tennis as well. I played varsity tennis, and I used to love playing doubles, and I used to play the net, and I usually just use my long arms and just bounce back and forth, and no one could get. I was called the wall.
Are you tall?
I'm 6 foot.
Okay, but you lanky.
Yeah, I have long arms,
That's cool.
so I can really
Yeah.
stretch out. Me and my quick feet with basketball and all that really helped. Serving, I only played 1 year of tennis, and I played varsity tennis, so I'm a natural athlete. But serving, it was like, man, if I didn't get my first time, I'm just lobbing it in there for these people.
Yeah. You use what you got.
Oh, 100%. And I was always serve it and then run to the net. My partner would always run to the back because he was always better in the back and I was always better in the front.
Nice. That's awesome.
So, I mean, if anyone out there wants to try tennis or golf or anything like that, highly recommend it. Or even an instrument. It helps out the brain a lot. Always problem
Yeah.
solving.
Yeah, exactly. Problem solving. We're advanced problem solving supercomputers. So when you think about it, we're adaptive machines.
Now, do you recommend any machines? Like, I've seen something on your social media page that has like a whole bunch of colors and they light up and you got to press the different colors that pop up.
Yeah, there's a few things I recommend. I'm just to let listeners know I am sponsored by Beacon 40. It's light therapy. It releases 40 hertz light frequencies into the brain, which can help stimulate the visual cortex and actually boost memory. But one that I'm not affiliated with is what's called a vagus nerve stimulator, and I quite honestly believe that helped me become seizure free. A vagus nerve stimulator. I'm not going to say any companies' names, but for 2 minutes you stimulate the vagus nerve. It's non-invasive, and it's something that can like rewire the brain and help your autonomic nervous system calm down pretty quickly. So that's one of the other ones.
Now, do you recommend any red light therapy for the brain?
Yeah, red light therapy is great. A colleague of mine, Dr. Ryan Cedarmark, actually posted something so interesting about that. Is that red light therapy can actually, if I'm not messing this up, can penetrate the skull and stimulate the brain, which is kind of crazy when you think about it, and reduce inflammation and all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
You know, most people don't realize what they have until they lose it.
Yeah.
What does a healthy brain allow us to do that we usually overlook?
I would say happiness. Like it helps us when you got that right neurochemical dose. I mean, happiness is such a gift, and gratitude are just such gifts when you're getting your brain back on track.
Yeah, that is so true because it really your brain is so special. There's nothing like it. There really isn't. And the more you use your brain, the better off you're gonna be.
Yeah, 100%. And uh, it's the most complex thing in the entire universe that we understand at this point. We don't even know the potential output of the brain. We still don't know to this day how much potential we all really have inside of us.
That is 100% true. I want to ask you this because sometimes I ask my guests this, but how has your faith guided you through your journey?
It's been a big role to me when I found connection with God in the universe. It was uh, it was just like an aha moment. It was just like I saw the light at the end of the tunnel, and getting connected with something outside of myself, something bigger than me, was just such an important part of recovery.
You know, you've been through a lot in your life. What's one of the best pieces of advice that you can share at this point in your life?
I would just go back to hard now, easy later, easy now, hard later. Uh, David Goggins is somebody who I look up to, and it really is true that we have pain and pleasure in life. That's just life, right? And uh, we want to get outside of our comfort zone and become the best version of ourselves every single day. And I truly do believe every day is kind of like a new reset, a new start, that you can change your story. You can pick up the story was already written, right? The past, we can't change that, but each day we can pick up that pen and begin to rewrite a new story about ourselves.
I love that because the show is called Every Day is Friday and it
Yeah.
means new beginnings. It's a new beginning every single day. Every day is Friday. It means freedom, excitement, feeling of accomplishment after a long week. You know, that's what Every Day is Friday stands for.
I love that, man. I love that so much because that in the life that I want to create, every day is Friday. In my
You know,
heart of hearts, it's like I want to live an amazing life and where every day really is Friday because it's possible.
yeah, what does Every Day is Friday mean to you?
It means that we that we are grateful for the day, that we're happy no matter what's going on in our outside world. We can reconnect with ourselves and give love and appreciation for what we do have instead of what we don't have.
You know, Dr. Brody, what has been the biggest driver of success in your career?
Really, really just focusing on what I do want versus what I don't. And what I mean by that is we have a negativity bias as humans. It's an evolutionary thing that we're going to focus on the things that are threats. But if we can just refocus on where we do want to go and just keep taking consistent daily steps and even baby steps or pinky moves in the right direction, boy, it can add up over time.
Now, this is your chance to leave the listeners with something powerful. What do you want to share?
I would love to share the power of self-love and self-compassion, because a lot of us are givers and we give a lot to others, but we forget that we have to give to ourselves first, and then love ourselves and appreciate ourselves before we can help others at all. So understand it is a practice and you can get better at it.
Yeah, that circles back to what you said in the beginning of the podcast, to know thyself.
Know thyself, and you can change your life by changing your thinking.
I want people to find you and support your work. All your information will be in the description down below, but where can people follow and support?
Sure thing. So they can find me at Dr. Brody Miller, DRBRODY Miller.com, or across all social media platforms. You can reach out to me on Instagram. I'm the most active, DRBRODY Miller. And yeah, that's where they can find me.
Dr. Brody Miller, I appreciate you being here today. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you, Matthew. Had an awesome time.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your stories and experiences. It was a really good conversation.
Likewise.
And to everyone listening out there to this podcast right now, stay tuned for more amazing stories on Every Day is Friday 365. If you enjoyed this, make sure you follow, share, and keep that Every Day is Friday mindset going. Stay inspired and make every day feel like Friday. Until next time, everybody.